to begin, if we're at all honest, we must admit that the deplorable state of affairs in the Middle East, in Egypt, Iraq, Israel, Jordan, Lebanon, Palestine, Syria, the Persian Gulf and the Arabian Peninsula, and peripherally Libya, Afghanistan, is a product not only of the dynamics of the region, but also of a lapse in our capacity to think and act strategically. We've answered the end of the bipolar Cold War order with a mixture of denial, strategic incoherence, and inconstancy. False American assumptions and unrealistic U.S. objectives have helped create the current mess in the Middle East. It's not news to anybody that American politics is uncivil and dysfunctional. We have a foreign policy elite that has its head up its media bubble, prefers narratives to evidence-based analysis, confuses sanctions and military posturing with diplomacy, and imagines that the best way to deal with hateful foreigners is to use airborne robots to kill them, their friends, and their families. We have leaders who can't lead and a legislature that can't legislate. In short, we have a government that can't make relevant decisions, fund their implementation, enlist allies to support them, or see them through. Until we get our act together at home, those looking for American leadership abroad will be disappointed.
Isolationism, a policy of remaining apart from the affairs or interests of other groups, especially the political affairs of other countries.
When President Theodore Roosevelt had been inaugurated in 1898, one of his major declarations had been to update the Monroe Doctrine, to further secure it and enforce it. He did so by adding the Roosevelt Corollary, in which it stated that any European nations wouldn't become involved in the American sphere of influence by relying and depending on the U.S. would help stabilizing the economies of Central and South American countries. When conflicts further increased and furthered in Europe, it began to get harder for the United States to remain as an isolationist country. The United States' initially immediate reaction was to remain neutral by trading with both sides. This had marked the beginning of the abandonment of isolationist policy, as it became harder to remain neutral during such a difficult time during World War I.
Isolationism began with George Washington, who condoned the foreign policy because he advocated non-involvement of the U.S. in European wars. The time where Americans had been more pushed to be choosing the policy of isolationism was during World War II and the Great Depression. Another U.S. president who supported the policy of isolationism was Woodrow Wilson, who wanted to spread democracy and spread foreign beliefs based on ideals and morality through Wilsonian diplomacy. As Office of the Historian states, the reality of a worldwide economic depression and the need for increased attention to domestic problems only served to bolster the idea that the U.S. should isolate itself from the troubling events in Europe. As for post-World War I events, Congress essentially preferred to be isolated, considering they did not wish for the United States to be a part of the League of Nations. However, for the new president at the time, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, he wanted the U.S. to take part in international affairs. He even proposed rights to be granted to do so, however, was opposed by many isolationists as well as Congress. Isolationists are a diverse group of policy supporters encompassing progressives, conservatives, business owners, as well as peace activists. They were very successful in their policies because they didn't receive many constant opposers, thus enabling them to continue with the lack of criticism they received.
Avoiding any foreign entanglements, the country will and most likely use all its resources to build infrastructure and lift its people out of poverty. By doing so, taxes could potentially be lowered. The occupation of Afghanistan and Iraq are unsustainable expenditures given a national debt of over $15 trillion. Decreased costs and increased long-term security are some of the benefits of an isolationist policy.